and ready to introduce our next guest to the stage. Hi, Daniela.
Hello. Hi, Max. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you
Great.
fine.
Great.
So Daniela is a general manager of decentralized technologies at the Linux Foundation and executive director at Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. So I'll start your presentation here on the stage, and yeah, you can start.
Great. Well, thank you, Max, for having us, and it's a real honor to be here. I'm actually zooming in from Singapore, where it's close to midnight, but it is really special to be invited to come and speak. And today I'd like to spend some time talking primarily about open source and the projects within the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust that are focused on blockchain and other decentralized technologies, but really how open source is a way for innovation to shape the foundations for resilient economies. And I look forward to your feedback and your participation afterwards as well. Just very quickly about myself, I'm Daniela Barbosa. I'm the executive director here at Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust. I'm also the general manager across decentralized technologies at the Linux Foundation. I'll explain what that means in a bit. I've been in the industry in the blockchain industry since early 2016, you know, in the blockchain industry, not for work, for a much longer time as well. So really honored to be leading the foundation here at the Linux Foundation that over the last 10 years has been focused on building blockchain and decentralized identity projects. For those of you who do not know, LF Decentralized Trust, it stands for Linux Foundation's Decentralized Trust. It's an expanded foundation. Last year, we expanded our mission and charter to include all the Hyperledger blockchain projects and new projects that came in. And now we are a global foundation focused on blockchain, decentralized identity, cryptography, interoperability, and other decentralized technologies that I'll cover as well. We are a part of the Linux Foundation. That's really important to understand because the Linux Foundation for the last 25 plus years has been the home for some of the world's most important, I would say, open source projects, obviously the Linux kernel being one of them. But there are many projects across the Linux Foundation that many of you have access to or probably already using across different vertical industries, in networking in the telecommunications industry, in the film industry, even with the Academy Software Foundation, where the film industry has come together to openly collaborate on open source programs that make movies better for all us to see. But across, obviously, cloud computing with Project Kubernetes, in Edge and IT with LF Edge. Across all the industries that you see here, we have some of the most important open source projects, and certainly in digital trust around our blockchain and decentralized identity projects as well. Excuse me. We are a global organization, and we're really focused, obviously, on the free exchange of data, code, and innovation, which is, I think, critical to the rebuild concept of not just Ukraine, but around the world as well. In the foundation itself, we have thousands of universities, nonprofits, from around the world. Obviously, 100% of the Fortune 100 telecommunications and telecom and technology companies are members of the foundation. We have millions of developers contributing to the code projects that we host, and really creating a lot of shared value in the industry and in the market for everyone to reuse as well. So across all the foundations that we have, and we have thousands of open source projects within our umbrellas, as you can see here, the numbers really start adding on in regards to how many activities we have across these Linux Foundation projects. And in order to support these kind of activities, these diverse ecosystems of developers across the world, whether they're working on blockchain or in cloud computing, on data and AI projects. It really is an operational feature that the Linux Foundation brings to everyone around the world, including hopefully many of you. There is no doubt that in the blockchain space, open source development is essential to decentralized technologies. And we really believe that the future of decentralized technologies is open source that's openly developed and openly governed. We encourage everyone to open source their code, to put their code on GitHub. But what do we really mean when we say open source that's openly developed and openly governed? Open source is a public repository of code that anyone can use, evaluate, and contribute to and build upon for any purpose. And as I mentioned, if you have a code that you open source, that's great. We really encourage everyone to do so. When we talk about open source that's openly developed, that means that there's an active community building on that open source together in the open, that anyone can participate, anyone can contribute, and there's paths that are very easy to understand to get to. And then open source that's openly governed means that the procedures and the roles for the community, how decisions are made, how the roadmaps are put together, the priorities for the project is openly defined and managed. And once again, it's easy for anyone that wants to use the code or anyone that wants to contribute to the code to really understand how that code is being governed. We encourage everyone to go through the path of open sourcing, creating open development communities, and then making sure that you have open governance across the code, and certainly the code that you're using as well. So why open source? Why use open source? Why contribute to open source? Why open source projects to a neutral foundation like the Linux Foundation? And your own GitHubs. It's primarily so others can examine, verify, and learn from the code. This is obviously very important in the blockchain space, where transparency of the code is critical for anyone to be able to operate and participate in networks. It verifies the software, allow other people to trust it, and that's quite important as we're talking about the trust networks that you all are building out. And open sourcing many benefits, things like for security, where others who can look at code and report bugs and vulnerabilities in the open transparently so everybody could see. So, many people talk about the efficiencies, the economic efficiencies of open source. Working together, we really do believe, and we've seen across the world and in many regions that, collaborations in open source, that building core technology, doing it together really creates environments where people are moving the code and moving the industry forward while still competing. Open source doesn't mean that you can't make money off of it, that you can have revenue, that you can't build successful companies on as well. And once open source is out there, it ensures that even if one organization goes away, the development of that code continues and people can continue using. So sustainability, especially as you're building financial infrastructure, as you're building digital identity infrastructure, anything that's a market or government, making sure that it's open source is quite important as well. There are quite a few misconceptions about open source and why it's important, not only in the chain space, but across. We always hear it, we don't trust open source process, is it it's not as secure as a proprietary software, and there's really no evidence of that. We can actually argue, there's a lot of reports, even on the Linux Foundation website, that will point and provide data on open source is more secure because more people are fixing and finding those bugs as well. There's always, especially as we talk to governments when they're looking at open source projects to use, there's provenance. We don't know who built it. How do we know what maintainers or contributors are there? And basically people are already using open source, and sometimes they don't even know it's open source. And there's a lot of standard commercial support as well for a lot of these open source projects from companies big and small. And then there's also a scope question. If I open source something, do I have to open source everything? And that's certainly not required. You can open source parts of code, or you can use parts of code that are open source and then use proprietary or deliver proprietary code in other parts as well. Open source is certainly a way to collaborate and bring innovation to the market. I think many of you who have been speaking over the last 2 days that are in the blockchain space and building out these protocols and these networks understand that open source is truly a way to drive collaboration, optionality so that it's vendor neutral, creating lower prices and switching costs across the industry. Very important, obviously, for up and coming regions and for regions that have a lot of constraints of spending in the technology field. Where you see projects, and there's some of us, some here at the Linux Foundation Decentralized Trust, where governments and different organizations are building together so that they can avoid duplication of effort across these use cases. And it's really important for us to help convene both governments and regions together to be able to do that as well. Openly developed software, essentially becomes a common standard. And here at the Linux Foundation and at LF Decentralized Trust, so LFDT, we really are driving the ecosystem to have standards that they can work towards to really facilitate interoperability between projects, but very importantly to drive a common standard that everyone can use globally, especially as you move systems and assets, for example, across regions and ecosystems. We really believe that the power of community will always outperform the power of a single company. And one thing that I hope, if you are not familiar with open source, if you don't have a lot of experience in open source, is that really is the true power of community, is being able to collaborate together. There are many government projects, and I'll talk a little bit about those, that have to chart new territory. They're basically building new market infrastructure, new digital identity infrastructure, et cetera. And by collaborating with others around the world, it really makes the development of these code bases and these networks much faster. So the result is always production-ready technology that's hardened to support mission-critical regulated systems that last. I say this all the time, and many of you are building infrastructure today that's not just for yourself, it's for your children and your grandchildren and our children and grandchildren around the world. And it's really important to make sure that the code and the code and the processes that you go are truly open and available for all to use. Some examples of just some public sectors as you think about maybe local Ukrainian systems. I know there's a lot of open source and a lot of organizations within Ukraine that support, contribute, and use open source as well. But I thought it would be helpful to show you some world examples. For example, the World Bank and their open source strategy is really an interesting one to take a look at, as they really use open source as a way to be transparent in what they're building for the global economy, and for the development of digital public goods that people can trust and use as well. And I will make these slides available for everyone who wants to then click through the links as well that you can see. Other public sector examples in the United States, the GSA, the Government Services Administration, and the U.S. Digital Service They really have an open source policy that all code developed is open by default. This obviously helps with the reuse of this code across different agencies in the US and outside of the US as well. There's also government digital services in the UK and the Canadian digital services as well. And as I said, I am quite aware of the Ukrainian government digital services, and some of these practices are also relevant. When we're thinking about blockchain specifically, we see really, blockchain and digital DLT technology, diverse use cases across obviously in financial services, but in public sector, healthcare, telecommunications, supply chain. Really, DLT is a general purpose technology, and we really have seen over the last 10 years here at the foundation adoption of these technologies across many important industries that really drive countries and drive governments, etc. As you think about the last 10 years here at the Linux Foundation, you might have known us as the Hyperledger Project or the Hyperledger Foundation in the past. A lot of these projects have come in and been contributed by big companies and small companies and are really driving the adoption of blockchain and decentralized identity across the industry based on what the new industry needs are as well. And so we have a growing landscape of technologies, across ledgers, projects like Bezu, which is an EVM and currently also runs 16% of the Ethereum mainnet as an execution client. Projects like Hyperledger Fabric, which have run some of the biggest production supply chain and traceability projects. Hyro, which is the code base that runs the Hedera public layer 1, and on and on. There's a lot of ledger technologies that are really powering a lot of the system out there. We're looking at projects in the interoperability space, integration implementation, decentralized identity. I'll go in a little bit of this, cryptographic tools and protocol, and then smart contracts as well, as continue to expand. We are of the opinion that there is a spectrum of blockchain. There's not one blockchain to rule them all, and not one type of blockchain, where you see permissionless public blockchains, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Cardano, Hedera, etc., and more and more and more every day there seems to be another one. I do believe there'll be consolidation, but there's never going to be just one layer 1 or one layer 2. Across to the other side where we see permission, private distributed ledgers for certain use cases as well. As we see things in the market and in the industry, for example, topics around privacy, you were starting to also see both of those sides kind of blend together and come down to the middle, where the public permissionless ecosystems are using privacy preserving technologies to create privacy, and permission systems are starting to sometimes and more often using public infrastructure to also deliver these solutions to the marketplace. One of the things that I thought might be interesting to just highlight is where we see public permission networks. These are also built using Besu, but in Latin America, we have LACchain, which is a layer 1, essentially a public layer 1 with permission governance by the Inter-American Development Bank. In Europe, you see EPSI, which was the first public sector blockchain services in Europe, in Spain, Alastria, and in Brazil, Blockchain Brazil, Blockchain Brazil. All these are public permissioned layer 1s that are being used by governments and other regions to really provide services across there. If you go on our website, we just recently published a case study that highlights all these case studies, these projects as well. So want to very quickly highlight the work that we're doing in the decentralized identity space, where I think is really critical, especially in countries like the Ukraine, where you have an opportunity to build decentralized identity projects that really benefit the citizens of the country. And some of these projects we've had for a while here at the Linux Foundation. Others are relatively new. For example, Trust over IP has been at the Linux Foundation since 2017, and Trust over IP is a joint development fund working on standards to develop the architecture for the Internet Digital Trust. There are some great new working groups that I thought I would highlight that might be of interest, specifically around the topic of AI and AI agents. There is an AI and human trust working group, in a decentralized trust graph working group, where they are working on a standardized approach to proof of personhood, where you can prove that a person is a real, unique human being without violating their privacy. And then the trust spanning protocol, which is defining cross-ecosystem protocols to enable interoperable, verifiable interactions between networks. So these three are just three of the working groups that are happening at Trust over IP that could be interesting to some of the use cases that you are working on. Another highlight, the Bhutan National Digital Identity. All of Bhutan as a country has a digital identity, national digital identity program. It's built on one of our open source projects called REBUIDL, which is aligned with the Trust over IP framework. And just a couple of weeks ago, they also announced that they had now anchored all these trust registries and credential verification on the Ethereum mainnet as well. So pretty interesting project that a lot of people are keeping an eye on as well. We have a lot of tools. How do we make the use of these technologies easier for everyone to use? And we have a lot of tools that are integration, implementation, and really, once again, really focused on the requirements for these next generation and production implementations of blockchain and blockchain networks. We have new projects, Blockness, which is a cryptography library with MPC and signature thresholds, and Paladin, which we just announced this week, has been in our labs for a while, but we just announced it as an incubated project, which is delivering privacy plugins for EVM services as well. So lots of great stuff that our community continues to build, and we're very excited to be able to share with that. Another use case that I thought might be helpful to share, we do have an ebook that has, I think, close to 23 different digital currency projects that the central banks and the BIS are handling around the world. We're seeing a few of these central bank digital currencies or digital currencies moving forward in a production perspective, many of them with using our open source code bases as well. And it's not just, they're building out these code bases. Many of these central banks have developers and engineers who are participating in our community. They want to be able to contribute. They want to be able to bring their requirements to the community. So we just announced our 10th central bank that has joined the foundation to support the work that we do. That was the Bank of Korea that we announced today. We would love to have more conversations. We have spoken to the Central Bank of Ukraine in the past as well, and be as helpful as we can for a lot of these initiatives that the Ukraine is working on as well. We have a great place if you want to explore some of this cutting edge innovation and technology in our labs, or if you want to bring code, if you have code projects that fit our mission and scope, and you want to build a global community around it. We have a great way to bring code into our labs, and it's a very lightweight process where you can essentially start creating community and working on these open source codes together under the Linux Foundation with best practices around enterprise open source code. And it's a really great place to do that. And I really do look forward to, hopefully, out of this conversation and out of future conversations with many of you developers in the Ukraine and outside of the Ukraine, potentially finding places to come and work together here at the Linux Foundation. And as I said, we have over 100 different labs. 50 of them are pretty active. Many of these labs go on to graduate to be projects. So it's just a really great way to start experimenting. And I'd love to, once again, to see some projects coming from the community there. A couple highlights, just if you want to take a look at some of our newest labs, specifically in the zero knowledge domain. We have a project called Lightstream, which is developing post-quantum ZK proof systems, ZKBK out of Berkeley, which is building first-person credentials based on zero-knowledge proof systems, and generic ZK snarks, which is a contribution by the Ethereum Foundation that is being led by the Privacy and Scaling Explorations Group around standardizing generic ZK snarks. So privacy, obviously, very, very quite important process. We have a lot more labs that might be of interest to the community there as well. I went through a lot of stuff and you're like, whoa, Daniela, there's so much. How do we even know where to get started? We have some great resources on our website. The Project Matrix is a place that you can go and see. And once again, this is all open source. You can use it, you can contribute to it, you can participate. You don't have to be a member, you don't have to even be a named person. You really lurk and you can use the code for things. Our Project Matrix is a great place to get started on that as well. If you are interested in finding out more of the case studies, like what other case studies are there, we have a case study tracker. We have case studies on our website. Our case study tracker has over 300 different use cases built with our technologies. Some of these use cases obviously can be built on other platforms and other solutions, but if you have a desire to learn about how blockchain is being used worldwide, could be a great resource for you as well. All our projects are open, as I said, all our meetings are open. You can go to the calendar of public meetings on our website, browse by project or working group, and just participate. Show up, lurk on a call, watch a recording. If you register for the meetings, you get access to LFX as an individual, and you have a dashboard. All the meetings that you might miss, maybe there are not great hours for the Ukraine or wherever you are based in the world, you can go ahead and just record, automatically see the recordings and the transcripts, which can be translated if English is not your first language. We also want to have developers around the world be trained. We have training and certification on topics of how to be an open source developer, how to use open source, but then obviously on the projects themselves. So the Linux Foundation trains millions of people, and whether it's Kubernetes or the Linux kernel, or obviously the DLT projects currently that we have certification in is Hyperledger Fabric and Besu, and you'll see more in the upcoming months as well. But great resource upskilling your engineers to understanding blockchain. We have an intro to blockchain course that we launched and over 300,000 people over the years has taken. I get people coming up to me all the time, even crypto bros, right? They're not really interested in enterprise blockchain, and they'll say, hey, Daniela, my first foray into the blockchain space was that intro to blockchain course that I took in 2017, 2018, etc. We have a very active global community. Every week you can attend a webinar. And when I encourage, we do a lot of these webinars and discussions in other regions. In India, for example, we have 15,000 developers in our India regional chapter who get together, who share work within India and outside of India. In Brazil, we have over 7,000 people in our regional chapter. We have a regional chapter in Europe, a regional chapter in Japan, and we would love to support a Ukraine-based regional chapter to really help educate and help tell the story of what Ukraine is building to our global community. So I look forward to hopefully being able to talk to you all about that as well. If you want to start digging deeper, we have workshops on many of our projects and many of the topics that I covered today. And if you go into our workshop video pages on YouTube, you could pretty much find either 1 hour or 3 hour sessions or workshops that can really get you started in using these technologies and building solutions. Participating in the community is something I would highly invite you to join us. We are a Discord community where you can go by project channels and special interest groups and really get in there. There's regional chapters if you want to engage with other regions, for example, about the work that you're doing, get to do learnings from them. We're happy to coordinate that as well. So please do join our Discord and participate there. And if you've never been part of an open source community, sometimes you use open source and you've just never even participated in an open source community yourself. It's really easy. All are welcome to participate. It's really a great path for any organization, any country, any company that wants to contribute. It's very easy to do so. In our systems, you can just sign up for an account and you get an LFID, as I mentioned. You get the whole platform and you get access to trainings and courses and stuff. We have a code of conduct, so you can always feel that within our community you are in a safe space. And if you just start lurking, join a couple calls and find out how the projects work, how the community works, whether it's a lab or a project. There's many great in the labs, for example, other DLT projects that the community is working on that I would encourage you to take a look at as well. So without further ado, I'm happy to take any questions, but I encourage you to participate. I encourage you to learn. I encourage you to talk about open source within the Ukraine, whether it's the government or other agencies. And we're always happy to do sessions, to do workshops, to really educate on why open source, why open development, and why open governance is really the way to build our future networks.
Great. Thank you so much. So much information and such a great network of projects and ideas. It's just amazing. And I also, while you were speaking of the community, I wanted to remind our listeners that we together organize a meetup for the Ukrainian community in mind, happening on November 20th on the national decentralized identity national standards, where we'll have some of Ukrainian experts, but also we expect the expert who was building Bhutan identity. So thanks for this interesting partnership opportunity. And thanks for staying so late with us. I know it's quite late now in Singapore.
Yeah, not a problem. And if we're happy to connect. We are connectors of our community that's so big. If there's other groups that want to have presentations, just let us know, and we're here to serve you. Thank you, Max, for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. On this note, I guess we need to move to the next speaker, and